Friends, I'm sure you all have heard of New York, the world's greatest mega city. Nevertheless, let me tell you a few interesting facts about it. New York has always been a city of superlatives and firsts, the richest, most populated, most diverse, most innovative home to world's longest bridge, tallest skyscraper, largest public park, most elaborate subway system, the first to have electricity, telephones, potato chips, pneumatic railway, teddy bears, credit cards, air conditioning, Silicon Valley, and Scrabble, among other things. It has attracted business people and artists, rich and poor, and privileged and persecuted. Today, let's look at the journey of this great, vibrant city. Friends, New York originated when a massive sheet of ice started melting some 12,000 years ago. Pine trees and grasses grew as the climate became warmer. Woolly mammoths, bison, bears, and other large land animals, as well as hunter-gatherers, appeared. As many as 3,000 years later, those animals and humans vanished. The melting point caused oceans to rise, turning valleys into estuaries and forming new islands and peninsulas. Soon, a great generation of humans who called themselves Lenape arrived. Initially, they lived off deer, fish, nuts, berries, fruits. About 1,000 years ago, they started growing their own food. In the 16th century, Italian navigator Giovanni Verrazzano set out to find a shorter route to India and China. His quest was unsuccessful, but it motivated other explosions, many of which ended in Lenape hooking. Now, Lenape hooking is a term for the lands historically inhabited by the Native American people known as the Lenape in what is now mid-Atlantic United States, where the explorers started selling furs from Canada and Russia, as well as kettles, blankets, hose, knives, etc., to the Lenape. In 1609, Henry Hudson, an English sailor, claimed the area up the North River, now the Hudson, for the Dutch East India Company. This area, named New Amsterdam, became Dutch trading post in 1624. In 1626, Dutch colonial governor Peter Minuit purchased New Amsterdam from the Lenape tribe, allegedly for a glass beads worth $24. Now, New Amsterdam's population, which was just about 1,500 people then, included Dutch, Belgians, French, and English. Dutch farmers built the earliest settlements. Jews and African slaves arrived, and by the 18th century, it was an upmarket address. The Dutch eventually lost New Amsterdam to the British, who renamed it New York in honor of the Duke of York. In 1700, New York's population was just about 5,000, but it was growing rapidly. It multiplied 12 times within a century, and New York became an important trading hub and slave labor driven economy. In 1785, almost 10 years after a failed attempt at achieving freedom from the British, and 13 years after the Great Fire of New York, President George Washington declared New York the largest city in the US, the capital of free America. The capital shifted to Philadelphia later that year. The Bank of New York was formed in 1784 and the New York Stock Exchange in 1792. By 1810, New York was a major cotton trading port, and by 1817, thanks to the completion of the Erie Canal from Hudson River to Lake Erie, it was undisputed trading capital with a population approaching 123,000. In the manner of rapidly growing urban spaces, the city's growth was haphazard. To combat that, the governor appointed a commission to plan the layout of the city. In 1811, the commissioner's plan proposed a neat grid-like arrangement of streets and avenues for the entire city, including Manhattan. By the 1830s, the population swelled to 3,12,000 and efforts were initiated to provide clean water. The New York Police Department was established in 1844. Between 1892 and 1924, more than 12 million immigrants arriving from Ireland, Germany, Europe, Asia, and other places passed through New York and settled in the US, forming communities, started businesses, and building places of worship. It was relatively recent in the 20th century that the New York City took its present shape. Geographically, the city is situated on one of the world's largest natural harbors and is composed of 5 boroughs: Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island. Each borough is a county in the state of New York. In 1895, the citizens of all 5 counties unanimously voted to merge with Manhattan to form Greater New York. Before the countries united, New York's population was roughly 2 million. After the merger, it increased to 3 million. By the 1920s, it had overtaken London, and by the 1930s, it had crossed the 10 million mark to become the first megacity in the world. The US economy, suffering after the Great Depression in the 1930s, picked up because of the increased wartime spending during World War II, and New York became the world's leading city. Wall Street consolidated the country's position in the global economy. New York continues to cope successfully with the pressures of the explosive growth. The increased crime rates due to job losses triggered by industrial restructuring in the 1970s and 80s were effectively controlled by the 1990s. The 24-hour rapid transport system, buses, ferries, and taxis continue to support the population that needs to be constantly on the move. Streets, expressways, and nearly 2,000 bridges and tunnels, many of which are internationally acclaimed engineering marvels, link the various boroughs, supporting vehicles and pedestrians. The sprawling 843-acre Central Park, the New York Botanical Gardens, lavish baseball, soccer, and basketball stadiums, internationally renowned museums, cultural institutions, and historic sites, as well as Broadway, the dream destination for every theatre professional, provide open spaces as well as physical and intellectual stimulation. New York, symbolized by the iconic Manhattan skyline, albeit altered after 9/11, continues to be the world's financial, architectural hub. It has something for everyone. The Empire State Building and Times Square are iconic spots in New York. So, friends, that was the brief history of New York, and I'm sure you must have found it very interesting. Although we keep talking about cities, but when you dig in deep, you find there are so many things that one doesn't know. So, friends, that's all I have for today. See you next week with some more interesting facts. Till then, goodbye.